Welcome to Your Questions Answered with Father Gruner. I'm John Veneri. In this program, we take the questions that you send us. Father Gruner answers them. We have discussions about them. Please continue to send us your questions at questions@thefatimacenter.com. We have a question today about Garabandal. It says, the predictions of Garabandal necessitated that Joey Lomangino regain his sight to see the miracle predicted. This is a false prediction because Joey Lomangino died. This is what the person says. Does that mean that Garabandal was not of divine origin?
Well, I'd like to preface this before I answer the question. First of all, as you know, at the Fatima Center, John, I promote the message of Fatima. I also promote other approved apparitions, and I, either by way of example or by teaching a lesson or something like that. Now, everyone knows that Garabandal has not been approved, but I'd also like to add to saying that the Bishop of Garabandal, back in '65, I was in Garabandal there on June 18th, and the Bishop said a few days later that there was nothing in the message of Garabandal which is contrary to faith or morals. So one could believe it or not, but he wasn't endorsing that it was of supernatural origin then. Now, a lot of history has gone on since then, and one of the predictions, I met Joey Lomangino myself when I was there in '65, and I met him subsequently since, a couple of times.
And I think, too, just for people to, Joey Lomangino,
well, he
had his sight, but then he was...
When he was born perfectly healthy, he had a tire exploded in his face, mm-hmm. and cut off his vision. I mean, he blinded in both eyes and also cut off his sense of smell. Mm-hmm. Padre Pio restored the sense of smell by a miracle sometime later. And of course, he was a walking miracle in as much as the nerves are still cut, mm-hmm. but he could smell. I mean, I remember being in the car with him, and certainly it was a terrible odor. I forget what it was. We were passing some place in New York. It was where he lived in New York. He lived in Long Island, and but he could certainly smell it. He remarked about it. But my point is that, but he was blind. He was blind all his life, and he died in June. I heard about his death.
Blind from the time of the accident.
From the accident, yeah. He was died. In '65 is when I met him, and he was blind before that. Okay. And he was blind until he died and he died last year, that is I believe in June of 2014. And so, two things. First of all, Garabandal has a lot of interesting things in there, and there's certainly, I think that the Malachi Martin would speak about Garabandal and say that because the Vatican didn't release the secret, Our Lady released the secret by the apparitions of Garabandal. The most striking line in Garabandal, which I believe is in the secret that's still released, is that in Garabandal says on June 18th, many cardinals, bishops, and priests are on the road to hell, and they're dragging many souls with them to hell. And this would be, I think, a line or very similar to that in the secret that they haven't released, and telling people how to avoid the bad priests and how to follow the good priests and how to recognize them. Anyway, my point being that I don't think that this doesn't necessarily falsify the message of Garabandal because of this thing with Joey. There's a book I have on my shelf, and it's a very famous book, at least in the 20s, I translated in English, called The Graces of Interior Prayer. And in that book, it describes how even a true apparition or message can have falsehood seep into it. And there's 5 different ways. I can go into those 5. So I don't know that just because this apparently was false, and even there, in the miracle of Garabandal, in the message of Garabandal, I don't know the real explanation. I don't pretend to know. But even Father Andreo, who also died, he died in '62, he was promised to see the great miracle. But he died in '62, but you had theologians at the time saying, that doesn't mean he won't see it when this happens, okay? So the same thing with Joey. If Father Andreo's explanation would also apply to Joey in itself. But you don't have to go that far. You can just simply say, this is a part of the message that wasn't properly understood and or properly transmitted. And again, so at the same time, I'm not making an advocacy for Garabandal, but I wouldn't say
you wouldn't dismiss it just because of this point alone.
Yeah, that's all. That's all. Okay.
All right. Well, as I said too, I remember Malachi Martin was a believer in Garabandal, although he would tell people that it's an unapproved apparition, and you can accept it or not.
Sure.
So it's certainly interesting what was said at Garabandal, and the point that Malachi made about the secret is worth considering that Maliki knew the secret himself.
Yes.
So anyway, that's all we have to say on this point. Send us more questions on this topic or any other topic regarding the faith or Fatima, and we will see you on the next broadcast. Thank you.